what we're saying here is that Drake Maye's ready to play if they need him to play. So if he's ready to play, how come he's not starting? That's sort of your question. But, Greg, your thoughts on how they are handling their quarterback plan as it stands today?
This is the latest in a long line of things that I just don't understand what they're doing. Like, it's not only mixed messaging, but also just mixed actions. I mean, if it has really surprised me that they haven't signed some sort of veteran to the practice squad. Now, probably it could be a case of some of the guys that they might like have already signed to other practice squads. That would be more of a fit for them. So I don't know. I don't know why they didn't sign him, but that it's just Brissett, May, and Milton. That's all they have. They don't have anybody on the practice squad. So if the worst happens and Jacoby Brissett goes down in week 1, then Drake Maye starts week 2. So I just don't understand why he's not starting week 1. If you're okay with him starting week 2, then he should be okay to start week 1. He's not going to learn that much in 1 week. I mean, I guess what it's telling me is that they're hoping that Jacoby Brissett makes it through 3, 4, 5 games where Drake can sort of see how things go, game planning, in-game adjustments. How do they handle these things? He gets more practice time under center, getting used to the snaps and all that stuff. But hope is not a plan, and so it's another thing that just worries me about what's going on with this team heading into the season, and I just don't think it's right. They keep talking about a plan for Drake Maye. This was part of the plan to play six snaps against the Panthers. How long does this plan last? Was it just a month? Was it just training camp? Or is it a season-long thing where there are certain benchmarks when he checks them, then he's ready? So he's either ready or he's not. So why not just play him from the start?
What do you think, Mazz?
So I was just going to ask Greg, to me, there's one part of it that's more illogical than the other. In other words, Greg, what is more illogical? The fact that May is not playing or the fact that they don't have a veteran backup?
The fact that they don't have a veteran backup.
See, that's how I feel. So if you're developing the kid, if that's the goal.
Mm-hmm. And the priority.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Then that should be the priority. He should not get any of these games, even if someone gets hurt. So they should have a veteran backup ready to go on the roster and someone else, whether he's on the practice squad or whatever. That should be the plan. The fact that May is a heartbeat away, to me, doesn't make sense. I don't get that. How can you say you're protecting him and yet he's a heartbeat away of, especially when you have a crap offensive line like the one they have? That's the part that blows me away. So what, like the plan goes out the window if Brissett rolls an ankle? That's it? To me, that's foolish.
Okay, so that's one of the things we want to talk about. If you joined us yesterday, we hit on some of this yesterday, but obviously being the holiday weekend, not everyone was around. So we'll reset a lot of stuff we did hit on yesterday to kick off the football week. Big Jim Murray, do you have a thought?
Yeah, so is this a second guess maybe to have kept Bailey Zappi?
Well, it didn't need to be Zappi. I mean, I would have preferred somebody who has at least been in Alex Van Pelt's system or the West Coast offense with Mike McCarthy, something from that tree where they, it's not going to be an uphill climb with verbiage and how they do things and the concepts they like. I mean, if they would have judged Zappi at the end of the day to be one of those guys, then I'm fine with that. They know better than I do as far as his comprehension level in the offense. And I mean, I could say it's possible that maybe they got caught by surprise that he signed with the Chiefs, but I think they were, pretty much done with Zappi at that point, that they didn't have. I just don't understand not having a veteran backup type on, like Case Keenum would have been a perfect guy, but he's on injured reserve. Like he had been in Cleveland for a while with Van Pelt. He's won games in this league. He would be a great safety net just in case the worst case happens. Right now, if Brissett goes down in week 1 against the Bengals, then they're coming home. They're flying by the seat of their pants. They're going to have to go to their emergency list. They're going to have to sign somebody from the practice squad. Now you're going to have to ramp them up. Like Milton can't be the backup at this point. So now this guy that you signed from somebody's practice squad,
So now
it
you're
just
questioning.
doesn't make sense.
So you're questioning the actual plan, not even just Gerard Mayo's messaging of it, which we all agree has been spotty. The actual, what are they actually doing? You're wondering about.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's what I'm more worried about. Like, when they got to the end and they discussed Drake Maye and I decided when they had that discussion when was their ideal timeline for Drake Maye? They had to have one. And I assume it's probably week 5. They would, the first 4 are really rough, 3 on the road. The state of the offensive line, you don't know how that is. So you'd like to work out some of the kinks. And bad offensive lines play even worse on the road. So with 3 of the first 4 on the road, that's even tougher. And so I assume the plan was, all right, ideally we'd like Drake at the earliest to start week 5. Did anybody stop to think, well, what happens in the worst case scenario? What happens if Jacoby gets hurt in week 1? What are we going to do?
Well, it forces their hand. So in a weird way, it feels like they've set this up in a way that they could say, well, hey, I mean, don't look at us. I think there's some in there that must want him in even week 1. And
This is what I think.
This has been going on for a while. Even when Drake was struggling, in parentheses, it wasn't that bad. Just that it took him a while to get going. Like the first 3 weeks, like Jacoby was clearly the better quarterback. And Drake was scuffling, really indecisive. Obviously protection issues were part of the deal, but it wasn't until the Eagles game when he gained some confidence and then he started to take off. But even during that time, the first 3 weeks, when you were like, this might take a while, there were some people in the building who wanted Drake Maye to start week 1 because I think it's because they're of the belief of you learn more by doing instead of sitting.
It feels to me like if Brissett went down, no one's rooting for injury, but some in that building would be like, oh, that's a shame. And then there goes Drake Maye.
But it's a little passive-aggressive versus instead of them making the hard call about when we're going to play them, we're going to let fate sort of,
lets him off the hook.
Maybe Brissett gets stabbed in the chest by the doctor like Tyrod Taylor did in San Diego. Maybe like Ben Roethlisberger, the first 2 guys get hurt, and we put him in, whatever. And we'll, it sort of takes it out of their hands to a degree. That if something happens with Brissett, it's like, well, what did you want us to do? The starter got hurt. It's like, no, I want you to be dialed in and in command of the situation and have it all scheduled out. And I think this is maybe a tell that they don't, and that they're this kind of a half measure.
It lets them off the hook.
But it could also be as simple as this, that, whether it's Gerard or others in the building, they actually wanted Drake to start. They thought he had earned it, that he had outplayed him, that we'll figure it. He'll figure it out on the fly. We'll deal with it. But they had promised Jacoby that he's going to be the starter. And that's sort of the way he carried himself. Like when he talked to the media after the quote-unquote decision was made, he kind of looked at everybody like, I don't know why this is a big deal. We all knew this was the way it was going to go. And even Drake basically said, Jacoby got all the snaps with the ones. It's not like I had a chance. It wasn't a real competition, so.
Okay, so we're going to talk football with Bedard over the first 2 hours like we usually do on Tuesdays, on Big Boy Tuesdays. 617-779-0985. There's a couple other things Greg wants to get to, including Brissett versus Cincinnati. You put in the notes there, Greg?
Yeah, I've been watching the film from that game.
What game?
So this was 2002. Jacoby.
I'm sorry.
22.
Sorry. What did I say?
02.
Okay. 2022. This was
Yeah, he was
during
10.
the, I think the Deshaun Watson suspension, because Watson started the second game against the Bengals. The Browns lost. When Jacoby started, they beat the Bengals. I want to say it was like 35-13. Jacoby played well. I think his passer rating was like 130 in that game. They definitely ran the ball a lot. Watching more of the film, brought up, my concerns about Jacoby in this season. I mean, they got the job done. They played well. I didn't think he played great. I think a lot of his yardage and effectiveness was schemed up against the Bengals. And I just worry. You could see some of the holes in his game, the indecisiveness, not really seeing things clearly. So, on one hand, you're like, okay, you have comfort that he's done this before against this team, but You got to also remember he had Nick Chubb. He had a really good offensive line. He had Amari Cooper. Some real weapons to work with, and I don't know if the situation is even close to the same.
Well, it's just some glimmer of hope. I mean, everyone's just sort of casting it, just trying to hang on to threads of hope. Joe Burrow, 1-5 career versus Cleveland.
They own him.
Okay, and so you've got a lot of that Cleveland personnel here on the coaching staff. Brissett and a lot of the coaches were there on that Cleveland team, so they might know something. Cincinnati, traditionally slow starting.
They're
Jamar
terrible in the first games, like the last 2 years.
So they have not come out of the gates well. Jamar Chase, is he reporting this week or not? I mean, you don't even know what glimmers of hope. But so when you go back, so I get the sense you want to go back and look at it yourself as it relates to Brissett versus that Cincinnati defense. You think the numbers outstripped the actual play?
Yeah, I was underwhelmed. I went in hoping to be like, okay, well, look at this, and now you can see, what, and then you're like, well, he missed this open guy. He was indecisive here, which is sort of what we've seen in camp. Like, Jacoby gets back there, and once he's better in practice, and then when the games come, he tightens up. He's not the same quarterback, and he's a beat. And I've heard Gasper say this, and he's exactly correct. He's like a half a beat late with everything. And there were a couple passes that should have been picked off that weren't picked off, and so I came away more worried than confident after watching some of that film.
You should be.
I don't know.
I would take that game and flush it down the toilet is what I would do. I just punched it up to look at it. Cleveland ran for 172 yards in that game.
44 times.
44 times and ran for 3 touchdowns. The point being, Cleveland could run the ball. Can these jackasses on Sunday run the ball?
Doesn't feel that way.
No, because they don't have an offensive line.
Okay, so the Patriots quarterback situation, of course. Anything else on the team? Start to get into this week. That's right, there's a ball game. We'll talk about that. Greg also put in his notes that he wanted to defend his honor against a character attack from Jimmy Stewart.
Yes.
Which we'll just put a pin in that, as they say.
I'm with Jimmy.
Don't let me forget this. Greg Bedard wants to respond to attacks from Jimmy Stewart on his character. Do I have that right?
You have it correct.
Okay.
We do characters here, Greg.
We'll get to that at some point. Your calls again at 617-779-0985 right after these words.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Felger and Mazz here. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.